Let me bring in a guest here. Mike McAuliff is a senior reporter for the Huffington Post, and he's been following this story and all these budget negotiations. Mike, in a best-case scenario where President Obama is an actual progressive, does he not appear to be the world's worst negotiator?
Well, I can't tell you how many times over the last 3 years I've heard progressive Democrats, even some middle-of-the-road Democrats, complain up on Capitol Hill about the president's negotiating skills. I think one guy said the problem is he keeps giving the Republicans more cheese, so they keep coming back for more. He starts out at the end point, and he doesn't fight for the part that he thinks or that progressives thinks he should be. He just lets them, here's where I'm at, and then he starts moving over to the right.
You know, one of the parts of the story that really struck me that I just talked about is Dick Durbin was in the Gang of Six. Nobody thinks Dick Durbin is a line of strength. He's normally fairly, if in my opinion, weak senator, a Democrat, and he got $2 trillion in tax increases out of people like Tom Coburn and Saxby Chambliss in their negotiations in the Gang of Six. When Dick Durbin embarrasses you with so much better negotiating than President Obama, I mean, it's got to break some sort of record, doesn't it?
Oh, it definitely has to break some sort of record. And I remember right around that time when they were deadlocked over the debt negotiations, Tom Coburn stood up in a press conference and he said, you know, if we send him a bill that's much like what Boehner, wants, he said he'll sign that puppy. And he was very confident about that. He didn't mince words at all. He was sure. That's how sure he was.
See, that's really interesting. The other part of this is in that Washington Post piece, which was not kind to either side in the sense that, like, they weren't trying to make a case for either side. They were just, and they had quotes from both sides. Mm-hmm. So I thought that they laid it out, in terms of getting the actual details of the story right, fairly accurately. They had quotes from the White House almost bragging about this. Mm-hmm. And Dan Pfeiffer had a really interesting quote. I want to give that to you. He said, he said, is there a political benefit to coming to a big budget deal with John Boehner? Sure. You see that mindset there, Mike? Mm-hmm. It seems that the White House thinks it doesn't matter what's in the deal. It doesn't, oh, you want to cut Social Security and Medicare? Who cares? As long as I get a political benefit out of it. So my way of thinking about this as I read the whole thing is they don't really care about progressive priorities that much. They just care about, hey, is it a political benefit or not?
Mm-hmm. Well, he's looked like a moderate to me, from the beginning. And I remember a lot of the things he said on the campaign trail about promising to cut taxes and whatnot. And he's sort of delivered on that part of it. I don't think progressives, when they listened to him, heard those things like the part that you mentioned in that Rose Garden speech. I don't think they heard those things. They wanted to believe that this man was purely a progressive. But I mean, if you go back and look at those speeches, you can find evidence of what you're talking about right now.
Look, part of the problem is, last part of this, is that as I'm reading the article, they get to a point where the White House takes this horrible deal with Boehner to Pelosi and Reid. And Pelosi and Reid appear to be, in the beginning, a little surprised. They're like, whoa, Jesus, that's a bad deal, right? But in the end, they bow their heads and say, yes, Mr. President, whatever you say, Mr. President. Having a Democratic president push Republican ideas like tax cuts for the rich, cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, isn't it actually incredibly helpful to right-wingers because then they get the Democratic leaders in Congress to also disarm?
Well, that's exactly right. And when you try to cut a campaign ad come this November, it makes it very difficult. I mean, just think about what the Republicans did with the savings from, cutting Medicare Advantage in the health care bill. They pounded on Democrats for gutting Medicare. Now, just imagine if you have the president agreeing to a lot of the fondest wishes of some of the more conservative Republicans in this country. Makes it very difficult.
All right, Mike McAuliff, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, from the Huffington Post.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jan.